started recording. So today we're going to specifically cover some more different or more HTTP requests. So a new site 5. So high level objectives, the ability to add an article to the new site. So right now we're only getting and displaying articles. We're not actually able to create articles. So that's what we're going to cover today. Also, we're going to create a dummy login with really no functionality. We're just going to create, a component, login component where someone types in a username and passwords, clicks submits, and it displays it in the console. So it actually doesn't have any actual functionality yet. And we have any questions about what we're covering in new site 5? All right. Let's talk about the different types of HTTP requests. So does anybody know the main HTTP requests that we've used or that you've seen or have been in the past?
Is this the GET request?
All right, yep. We've got the GET request. That's what we're currently using in new site. What are other requests? Post request. What does a post request do?
That's going to be updating. That's going to be updating information to the endpoint.
So it's not necessarily going to be updating information, but you are right that it's going to be adding additional information to the endpoint. So it's when we're actually going to be creating records from scratch. So we're creating new records. What other HTTP requests are there?
Delete.
There's delete. So delete obviously will delete a record from a database. So we've got getting one, we're getting records. We've got posting, we're creating new records. We're deleting records. What about updating records? What request method would we use for that?
Patch, put.
Yep. Put or patch. Yep. So if you look down here, if you're kind of glancing at today's material, so grabbing data and resources from a server. That's what we've been doing here. We're able to add queries to the URL. So that's how GET requests work. And then today we're going to be working on post requests. So let's go down to, how do I want to do this? All right. So before I actually jump into here, let me jump down here and just do our initial setup, and then we'll talk about the post request. All right, so if you'd like, use your own code from new site 4. So let's go over here. So I'm going to clone this or fork it over to my personal GitHub. So I already forked it. I've already cloned it down. So I cloned it down here, my new site 5. I've already copied over my new site 4 source directory. And then let's go down here and see what it says. So after copying over your source directory, run npm update tests. I know that tests have been really janky. I don't know why. So some of the new site tests were working for me. Some of them aren't. So we'll see if these work today. If not, we can always get past them. So npm run update tests. It should have updated some tests to include the new post request. So once you perform these steps, run npm install and npm run start. So we can execute that in one line by doing npm install and then npm run start. So once it installs everything, it's going to execute the npm run start command. What questions do you have about React or anything as this is installing? Jarrell, tell me about props. What are props?
So props, they seem like arguments, I guess, like arguments for components. That's at least how I've been understanding them. So you can, I guess, example of what we had done before when we were creating, when you were showing us the counter app and how different components could gather different props, I guess, those different states. And then you can assign each prop or props their own specific, I don't know if arguments is the right word again, but I will say props has been something that explaining it or understanding it on a deeper level has been difficult for me to do. Like using them has been relatively fine, but definitely understanding it on a better level has been a difficult thing for me.
Okay. Does anybody want to give it a shot of props, of how they think of it, props?
I think of them as a function argument now. I mean, if you look at the component, it's in HTML style tags, but I've had to really tell myself to think of those components as functions, which I guess they are. It's just difficult to remember that they're functions when you see them in your structure, you know, and then passing the attributes, they become the arguments as props, which get passed into. So yeah, I think of them as like a function argument.
Okay. And you say props are passed into functions. So where are props coming from?
Well, they're coming from where the component is invoked.
Okay. So the props are essentially data or arguments, or essentially props is data being passed in from a parent component down to its child. And it's a reserved keyword. Props is data that's being passed down from the parent component to the child component. That's what props is. And you can, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it helps me to remember that props is short for properties, that they're like features of the parent, that they're properties of the parent that you're like imparting to the children.
Yep. It's good. Yeah. And props, so if you're using functional based components, you have to physically pass in the keyword props into the argument or into the function component as an argument. Whereas if you're using a class-based component, props is already available to you in the class-based component by invoking this.props. All right. What is state? So we have props as data being passed down from a parent component. What about state? Charlie. Charlie, you there? Lou, what is state?
I kind of think of state kind of like just it's kind of, I don't know, it was a good way to put it. It's kind of like a value, and that each time that it changes, it's gonna cause the render method to go off.
Okay. Yep, that's definitely part of state. So anytime state changes, it triggers the component to re-render, depending on certain if certain conditions are met based off of whether you're using in your lifecycle component or your use effect. So state is essentially data that is local to that component. So, and state is a reserved keyword in class-based components. So state is local and declared within the component itself. All right, let's go back here. So yesterday was about the search functionality. So I've got world sections or everything's working. I've got some search functionality. Your search returned 2 articles. And there we go. Everything's still working. Just making sure. All right. So I'm just going to open this up and read about this. So new site here. So let's talk about post requests. Let's look at our APIs. I've got some async. Just going to get rid of this one for right now. I've got this filter, fetch articles, and this fetch articles is a little dynamic where I guess it only filters by title. If at any point in the future I want to make this a little more dynamic, I can apply a another filter that is included into that determines whether or not it's a title or a byline or something else. But right now it's just that. So in here, the fetch, we're just doing these are all GET requests. We're not, everything is just located in this URL. So we're appending information to the URL to get information. So just like a query or just a filter or anything. So anytime we're doing GET requests, all the information is located in the URL. So if you think back to like Ticketmaster, the request we're fetching from was all in the URL. We weren't adding anything else there. But with post requests, let's actually test this out. I'm going to go to my new site. With post requests I'll only read information from the body of the request. And we'll kind of talk about how we actually add stuff to the body. So I'm in here. I'm going to make a post request to add a new article in here. So I can bring that over here. So inside my console, inside my React app, I'm just going to create a variable. I'm going to call it title. Test, and then abstract AFT or abstract test. So I can do article object, I get that object back. If I wanted to make a fetch request to this API endpoint, so I can do fetch. What's that? HTTP. If I want to do localhost 3001/articles, there we go. So I want to add an article to the very bottom of this request. So I can go to that API articles like we have been doing for this, like fetch articles or fetch all articles. So I'm literally just going to that URL. And then the fetch request takes in an optional argument. So right now, the fetch request that we have been using has only been taking in one argument, which is the URL, but it also can take in an optional argument. So this optional argument is an object. And who recalls do you remember the HTTP server challenge where I saw some eyebrows being raised like, oh, how long ago was that? The HTTP challenge in Python, when we wanted to have like hello world display on a web page, what did we have to add into the request for it to display on the web page? Does anybody remember? We had to append some string information or like something in a string format in addition to whatever, like the hello world.
It was like the content type.
The content type. Yep. All right. I heard Jarrett Stiles. Did you say something?
Yeah, I was just saying like the header.
The headers. Exactly. So in order to add stuff to in post request, it needs to accept some headers. So we can say headers. And inside the headers, we can say, hey, what kind of content we want to include. So content type. So this content type value, it can be a bunch of different things. And there's a lot of different header attributes that we can add to here. But the content type that we're going to be adding is JSON, so application JSON. So that's what we're going to be adding. We're also going to, the type of method we're going to be executing. So method is going to be a post request. So we can also say get request or put request or delete request, but this is a post request. And then the data that's actually being read in, the data that is actually being read in this post request isn't coming from the URL like it is usually with the get requests, because in the get requests, it just reads strictly from the URL with like the where section equals section or where the filter ID, etc. All this stuff is all this data is being passed in the URL. Whereas in post requests, we need to pass in all the data into the body of the request. So if I wanted to add this article object data and pass it through into this API endpoint, I need to add the article object, but I can't just add this article object as a JavaScript object. I have to manipulate this into something else. What do I have to do to this JavaScript object to pass it through in the HTTP body?
Stringify it.
I need to stringify it. So I need a JSON stringify this article object, like so. So after that, if I just click, I get a promise. And let's see if it actually works. There it goes. My test. So it got added there. So if we want to do an add article, I can say const add article, and then say like article object. So I'm going to be passing in some data here. And then I can do, what do I want to do? Do I want to use async await or .then? Anybody have a preference?
Async await.
There we go. So I can do async. And then I can say, I'll do a try catch. Catch, error, and then console, it's like console.error, error message or something. So in here, I could say let response equals await, just like how we've been doing it up here. So await fetch. I can say URL. So there's a variable, global variable. Why is it doing that? Up there. So there's my URL. So I need to make a post request to this API/articles. The URL. And then in here, again, I need to add my headers. And there's content type. There's, again, other things I can add in here. But just for this purpose, I'm just keeping it pretty simple. I'm adding application JSON. So that's what's going to be added. I could also add text and other types of data that could be accepted into this post request. But right now it's just going to be JSON. It's going to be a stringified version. So I could just add text. I can add other information. The method it's going to be a post request. And the body, this is where all your data is actually going to be pushed through, is going to be JSON dot stringify article object. And then once I get that response back, I want to do something with that. Let's see, I can say let data equals response.json. And then I'm just going to console log the data right now just to see what that looks like. It's not going to 100% work, but from what I want to do with regards to posting the article. But right now, I just kind of want to see what this looks like when I actually do add a new article. All right. So now I need to create an add article page. So I created the API. Let's actually console log the article object. So when I actually do create that, we can actually see what that is. Let's add article. So I need to export that. There we go. Next, I'm going to create an add article page. So it needs to display a form. So once I go to a page, add dash article, it's going to display a component, which is an add article component or add article page component. And it should render a form that has a title, byline, abstract as a text area so it can create a new article.
Tom, can I see your add article function again real quick?
Yep. I was gonna say, what questions do you have so far about making a post request using the fetch API? You can also add other things like authorization. So just in case you only want to have certain people to be able to make post requests. So for example, at Facebook, not everyone can make a post request on your specific profile. So there might be some authorization that authorizes you as a user to only make post requests to your profile. So there's a lot of different things you can add into here to make it more secure.
Tom, so the response that comes back in the data, is that just a return? That's just like a okay 200 or something, or what is that?
Yeah, we'll take a look at what that actually is.
Okay.
When we actually do that, just to see. I can even just console log the response, but the response is probably going to be a pending promise. But we'll take a look at that.
Tom, do you have to put a wait in front of that response?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So if I didn't put an await in front of that, it would execute this and then immediately just execute this JSON response.json before I got back an actual response from making this post request. So it might throw an error. So I do need that. Thank you. What other questions do you have? All right. So with that, let's go ahead and make an add article page. Let's take a look. So create an add article page. So inside my pages, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to create an add article page.js. I can do RCS because I want to make a component. And let's make this a functional component. And let's just say add, I just want to make sure this actually displays. So I created an add article page that literally just says add article right now. So I'm going to go over to my app.js. I'm going to split the screen so my app.js is on the right and my add article page is on the left. I'm going to close the Explorer and I'm going to minimize this. All right. So here is my current paths that I have. Now I want to make a path to add dash article. So I can create a new route. I want it to be an exact path. I want it to say add article. And the component that I want to render is the add article page. And when I clicked that, it automatically added the add article page and it automatically imported it for me. I need to close that. Cool. So let's actually take a look at the application right here. And now if I manually go to add dash article, there we go. I've got add article shown right there. Questions about the add article page? All right, so now we actually have to build out the add article page. So in here, the things I need, there's a couple of ways we can do this. Let's just create some forms. I'm currently using React Bootstrap as my styling. So I'm just going to continue to use React Bootstrap. So the things I'm going to, what the hell? Hold on a second. Whoop. One second, Mike. One second. I'm just going to open up. Yeah. So I'm going to add import form button and maybe an alert just for maybe some error handling, but we'll get to that once we get to error handling. From React Bootstrap, I'm also going to need to import my articles API, because this is the add articles where I'm going to be executing this add article API. So from, got to go up, got to go to API, add articles, or articles API. So now I can add, I can say like React Bootstrap. I can look at some components. Let's look down here. I can look at forms. And I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to edit this to conform for what I actually need. There we go. So if I refresh this and go to add article, I get this right now. But I don't need my email and I don't need a password yet. So I can actually start changing all this stuff. So I can say like H1, add article, class name. I'm going to add some. There you go. I got add article. I don't want email address. What do I need here? I need a title. The type for the form control is not an email. So here for this email, if it says please include an email. So it already has some error handling in here, but it's not an email. It's just going to be text. I'll say enter title. I don't need this. We'll never share your email with anybody else. So I can go ahead and delete that. That's a little bit better. I'm going to make this style it a little bit more. There we go. Form basic title. I don't even know if I need this stuff, but I'm just going to keep it here for now. So password, I don't need password. I need a byline. The type is not a password because if you look right here, it automatically has the little dots so you're unable to see the password. But again, this is not a password. This is a text, but I might use this password form when I'm creating a login page. So placeholder, enter byline. And I don't need this checkbox. So it's starting to look a little bit better. And then lastly, what do I need? I can create another one of these. And instead of byline, I can say abstract and enter abstract. So does that look okay? Let's look over here. So we've got a title, byline, abstract. In addition to the form fields, you'll also need a submit button, which we already have. A submit button, type submit. Let's look back so you can see different items. I'm gonna change this to outline. I'm gonna make it a large button. And I'm gonna make it blocked. So
Tom, if we wanted to allow somebody to upload an image, is that generally the same process as adding another one of these and making it an image instead of like a text box or something?
no,
Or is
there's different ways to upload. So if you scroll down here, we have like this file.
Okay.
But that's specifically for this one. If I click that, it'll probably open up. See, it's already opening up something. Yeah, there's different items. But yeah.
Okay.
That's how you would do it using React Bootstrap. There's other ways to do it, but they're all pretty much very similar.
Okay, thanks.
Tom, what's the control ID gonna do on these?
I am not quite sure. So if I get rid of that, it might. I can Google that for here for like. Yeah, I'm not. To ensure accessibility, set control ID on group form. So it might have something to do with accessibility.
Like page readers or something?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So that might be for that. So if I delete those, I'm sure everything will still work correctly, but as far as accessibility standards go, it might not meet that. So I'm just going to keep all that stuff there. So next we need to have a form, an on submit that says handle form submit. Let me open this, make this bigger. I'm going to put all this stuff on one line. Oh, what the hell just happened? All right. Cool. So now on my add article page, I can add a handle form submit or add article. So handle form submit. And this takes in the event. And I can prevent default. What does the prevent default do?
Prevents the page from reloading when you hit submit.
Yep, it prevents the page to do like a hard refresh every time you submit because we don't want that to happen. So let's actually console log event. So how do I access this stuff in here? Like, how do I access these values? There's a couple of ways we can do it. So if I look in here, it might tell us how to. So event.target elements. So let's just console log event.target.elements and see what that looks like. So I've got my submit button, but now where should I add this function in relation to the form so it knows that this method is associated with this form?
On the button.
On the button?
Should be like an on click or.
We can do an on click. Ideally, we should have an on submit on the button. So when this form is submitted, it's going to execute this handle form submit. So this is this entire form. The button is associated with this form because it's a submit button. Oh, block type. And this button knows that it's associated with this form is because it's within the form div. So if I refresh this and say test again, something, do that, click there. I got event. Whoa, let's see what this looks like. These are elements. What is this? What did I do? Event.target.elements. I'm just gonna do that again, submit that, and put form control, basic email, passwords. So if I do events.target.elements at index 0, let's see what that looks like. Just testing. So we have there, we got the placeholder for the title. And if I do dot value, like so, there we go. We get the value from there. So if I wanted to get all 3 elements or all 3 values of the form, I can do elements at index 0, which is this input. Index 1 is this input. Index 2 is that input. So if I refresh that and do testing, I get all 3 right there. That's one way. There's another way we can do it, which I prefer, is adding a name attribute to here, like name equals title. And then down here for byline, I can say name equals byline. And I can say name equals abstract. So now I can console log event.target dot the name title dot value. And then I can do byline and abstract. So I can target this element by its name, which is title, and grab the value from there. So if I refresh that, there I get the same data. Questions about how I'm extracting that, the inputs from the form. All right.
Tom, what's the keyboard command that you use to highlight that whole thing and then quickly, it looked like you quickly duplicated it twice.
So I just highlight the whole thing. I don't even know if you have to highlight it. I think I just can go, yeah. So whatever line I'm on, if I just do command shift down, oh no, that's not it. See, it's all shift option or shift alt down or up. So I can just keep, I'm pressing up and down, it's duplicating it. Now, if you wanted to duplicate multiple ones, you can highlight them all and go down again. So it's shift option down.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. So in here is where I'm going to actually want to pass these values into an, oh geez, file, this article object and call this add article API. So what I can do is create an article object and say title equals that value. I can say byline equals that value, and then the abstract equals that value. So I created a form. So let's review. So I created a form. I created 3 different inputs using React Bootstrap's form control components. So I created a title, byline, and abstract. I created a submit button, which needs the type submit attribute in order to know that this button is in fact a submit button. I added name attributes to each input to specify what values I want to extract from the form. So this is the title value, the byline value, and the abstract value. I'm creating a handle form submit function, which takes in the event. I'm doing event prevent default to prevent the form from automatically refreshing the page, because that's how it functions by default. So I'm preventing the default behavior there. I'm creating an article object, because this is what I need to pass in an object to my add article API, which is right here, this article object. And I'm assigning each key to the value of each key to the event.target, the title, which is corresponds to the name of the input value, .value. So byline.value, abstract.value. So I can console log article object and submit that again. And there we go, get an object with the abstract, byline, and title. I'm also adding this onSubmit event handler that executes the handle form submit method, which is this. So next, I actually want to utilize this articles API, add article API, to add this information to the API endpoint. Should I use async await? Should I keep on using that? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to make this function to run asynchronously. So I can say async in front of that. And I can say let response equals await articles API add article, and pass in the article object. And let's see, what do we got? I'm just gonna console log the response. So what's going to happen is when I fill out the form and click the submit button, it's going to execute this, add the values to this object, pass that object into the add article API. It's going to come over here. Oh, why does it keep doing that? It's going to console log the article. It's going to try doing a try catch. So it's going to come in here, fetch, make a post request to this URL, which is localhost 3001/API/articles. And then it's going to add this articles object to the body of this request and stringify it, JSON stringify that. Then it's going to take the response, JSON it, and assign that to data, and then I'm console logging the data. So I'm not actually returning anything. So we'll see what this response looks like. Maybe it's undefined. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to just do a hard refresh. Article 2, byline 2, abstract 2. Cool. So let's see what happens. So this article API, line 44. That's what I'm console logging here. That's what's being displayed there. So it looks like it actually posted it, and it turned the response, or JSON, we're converting from JSON to an actual JavaScript object from here, assigning that to data. Now I'm console logging that data. And I can tell it worked because it added this created date to it and the ID to it as well. So it worked. But now look on line 15 in the add article page, it's undefined. It's right here because I'm actually not returning anything inside the add article API. I'm just console logging. So I probably should return that data to pass that data here. Questions about how that worked. So I can say return data, and now this response would literally just be the same value as this right here.
Hey, Tom, I have a question, not necessarily about that, but just about the article object there. Is there any reason to put that in like use state, use a hook for that so the variable is available? Or is it, if it's just internal to the function, you can just do it like that?
You can do it like this, or you can set it to state and then use state and pass that into this. It's all kind of personal preference as far as like what I want to do. Maybe if I do want to add this to state, like a use state, but my personal preference, I want to do something afterwards. So say I get a successful response back, maybe I want to reroute after I add the article, I want to reroute to the article page that displays that article, or I can display just like a success banner above this form that says, hey, you successfully added your article. It's kind of totally up to you of what you want to do. We can go into, I can kind of show you both of those after we take a break, but it's kind of up to you is how you want to use, whether or not you want to use, pass these values to state and then use state for it, or just do what I'm doing here. It's up to you.
So there's no hard and fast rule about using state like that?
No. All right. What other questions you have?
I have one question.
Yep.
So on articles API.js, starting from line 46, am I correct? Am I safe to say that that's some coding in the backend on a server side that we just don't need to worry about right now?
This part?
Right.
Yeah, so that you need this in order to pass it through HTTP. HTTP expects headers. If I didn't add any of this stuff, it would fail. So yeah, that's all on the back end, not back end, but it's all how the HTTP protocol works.
Right. So this new article we added into the database. Is it stored somewhere? Is that how?
If I can look here, I can see I stored it right here, article 2.
Okay.
So yeah, it's stored in in some database somewhere. It's literally inside of this Express server here somewhere, but it simulates just like you would actually post to an actual database to the outside world.
I see.
What the hell? All right. With that, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10:45, and we'll keep working through this.